Welcome back again to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed, and I am joined once again for the Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny by JMic at JMic Check and Matt Foreman at Fat Mormon. We're rolling the second six wide receivers this week. But fellas, how are you this evening?
I am doing well, sir. It's Thursday. It's almost Friday. Looking forward to the weekend.
No weather update. I was excited to drop the fact that it was 40 degrees here. We were above freezing.
Yeah, it was 66 today. Not 68. My apologies. 68 today. So, getting ready for the Super Bowl. JMic, we can have a little mayor's bet today.
How about the stakes here? We might have to work that out for me.
JMic, long-time, die-hard Bengals fan.
Lifelong. The term is lifelong. More than anything, I'm just excited to be able to see them do work. But I was talking to my wife about that today, and I was like, for whatever reason, I can see this really going poorly.
No, I can't. The problem is, too, is we have not seen bad Matt Stafford yet this playoffs, and it's coming, and I just need him to go through, one more game. Hey, and maybe if this Super Bowl, they can score more than 3 points, I'll be pretty happy about that, too.
I think that's probably in the cards.
I would hope so.
I think the beauty of tonight for me, anyway, besides the Super Bowl coming up, the wonderful halftime show where we get to us as folks in our advanced-ish age for music that we can appreciate there. I'm excited for this evening because we've got a little bit of pep in our step with these second six for the wide receivers. And who's to say that these second six are actually going to be landing in the second six of the overall ranks after we get done with the evening. So I think it's going to be a fun night. I think we're going to be able to learn a lot. And I think a lot of lines are going to be drawn in the sand. Not in concrete, but in the sand. Possibly moved. Who knows how that's going to work out. But before we jump in, guys, what do we want to kick tonight off with? What's been on your mind? What you've been thinking about? What's been up?
So I got a little intro. I have been listening to Freakonomics, and yes, I'm way behind the times. But it's an interesting book. It's economics framed with narratives. But the thing that caught my ear as I was listening today was a phrase called information asymmetry, and what they described that as was back before the advent of the internet. The experts had all the information, and the general public had to have the experts to get the information. And now that the internet is available, it delivers information incredibly fast, incredibly efficiently to a mass market of people. And it has started to shrink the gap between the experts, in quotes, where we're concerned, but the general experts and the public. And I got thinking about that with fantasy football and with what we're doing here with rookie evaluations and fantasy football and dynasty. And I got thinking about all the people that listen to us as I hate the term experts, but as kind of people who are a little more plugged in, or at least a little more degenerate about these rookies. And if you're within the sound of my voice, I want you to understand something about the consumer now is you have the power because you have all of the information that we do at your fingertips. And so I think listening to us is valuable because it gives you a place to start. It gives you an idea of what somebody else is looking for and what somebody else sees. But it also gives you the power to go and look for yourself and also listen to other people and put together the picture as a whole. Because if you think one person has the answers, you're in the wrong place, because we fully cop to being the dummies. We don't have all the answers, but we'll tell you how we're searching for them and good information that we find. And I think that's important. I think we're not trying to teach you what to think. We're trying to help you learn how to think, how to collect this information, how we have decided to collect the information and present it. And so I think, again, it's information asymmetry, but it's becoming more symmetrical. And we're here to try to help you, round your information off, make your own decisions, but also have a jumping off point. And so that's what I've got tonight as I listen to Freakonomics this afternoon at work.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Zach. We are not the puzzle. We are a small microcosm of the entire puzzle.
Come on. Sprinkle that with some goodness right there. I love it. That absolutely great way for us to be able to kick off the evening. Let's go ahead and jump right into it with the 7th wide receiver. And again, we're going off of the picture that we took there of DLF's rankings for the receivers from a week ago. So with that picture, the next wide receiver up for us, George Pickens, someone who the Devy community has been excited about for many a moon. The 6'3", 200-pound wide receiver out of Georgia. Listen, tears his ACL, I believe it was, misses essentially the entire season. However, comes in at the very tail end of the year to offer flashes of some really, really exciting play. If you look at the numbers, they're not going to be something that blow you away at all. If we go back to his freshman year, and I'd say this is actually a really good season for a freshman, 49 catches, 727 yards, and 8 touchdowns. George Pickens, big, fast, very good player, and showed in the national championship. He's still got some game left in him. Zach, I know this is one of the guys that you're super excited about in this class. Let's talk George Pickens.
When you said wide receiver 7 in this class, all I could hear is the Price of Right crowd going, higher, higher. I mean, St. Peter's Basilica has the second highest cathedral ceiling in the world. Its nave reaching a height of just over 150 feet. The highest ceiling on record is George Pickens. Okay, that's a lie. It's Beauvais Cathedral. But George Pickens has all the requisite tools to paint a fresco on. Pickens does something that very few wide receivers in this class can do. He attacks both man-to-man and zone coverages very well. He has 3 distinct moves off press. He beats corners with a jab move, a hesitation and a stutter combination, and with hand fighting. You see him give that real good swipe chop and get off a jam. Pickens creates much of his separation by being exceptional at reading the cushion that defenders are giving him. He'll break off routes to win underneath and also press his speed advantage to win over the top. And Pickens does a great job catching the ball with his hands away from his frame. And once he's secured the catch, he transitions to a runner very quickly, often adding yards on before defenders can react. And this is especially notable for somebody at Pickens' size.
So we're looking at George Pickens being a player that obviously Zach is very excited about. We hear all the reasons why. Foreman, it's over to you. Tell us, do we keep the love train going for George Pickens here?
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow up this guy. He's comparing wide receivers to cathedrals. Like, it's hard. It really is. But he makes everyone, the two of us, look good, JMic. So I guess we got that going for us, which is nice. I'm in the same boat as Zach here. I've been a fan of Pickens since 2019 as well. Going off what Zach said, spot on information there. I really liked Pickens' ability to track the ball. One thing that Zach talked about, which I was definitely looking forward to when we were doing this film study, is the sideline awareness with using 2 feet instead of 1. And I did see that with Pickens multiple times as well too. He does a nice job high pointing the ball. He also does a really nice job instigating pass interference calls as well too. One of those things where we talk about where I think that it was Someone posted it on Twitter that what's the biggest difference between the NFL and fantasy scouts is that fantasy scouts are looking for the fantasy aspects of it, but NFL scouts are looking for the entire process of being an NFL player. And I think that's something that I'm trying to be cognizant of as well too, because obviously if the better an NFL player is, the higher their draft capital is. And we've seen that matters more with wide receivers than it does more with running backs. So I think that's important to bring up when we're talking about these wide receivers, is that the better NFL player they are, the more they're going to get in the field, the more opportunities they're going to get to catch the ball. Again, with that, he's a willing blocker as well too. The one thing that's not a knock against Pickens, but he was being underthrown all the time. Whether it was Jake Fromm, JT Daniels, or Stetson Bennett. I don't know. Again, Kirby, what were you doing? At least you had Eason, but you threw away Justin Fields for Jake Fromm, my guy. I don't get it.
Sadness abounds there for Georgia with missed opportunities. But, hey, they get the national championship this year, so they're probably not worried about all of the sadness of Kirby from before. When we look at George Pickens, I've been excited to be able to get to this evening because I think that when we're looking at the prospects of George Pickens, the real question that hinges upon how we launch George Pickens into this rookie season comes down to two things. One, is he still the scary specimen of a wide receiver that he showed himself to be early on? And two, does the NFL believe that he's still that guy to give him the draft capital? The good from George Pickens is as good as every receiver in this class. If you want a wide receiver to build a passing game around with the ability to beat press, with the ability to leverage several moves and be able to do so, to get open in the short area, to get open deep, to create separation with enough long speed that really puts a lot of SEC cornerbacks to shame, which was really strange to see. You have it in George Pickens. I know, Zach, you were expecting me to come in here and poo-poo him, but that's not the case at all. I'm purely, obviously, we take into account with these film grades what we're seeing. And again, he's one of those guys, maybe I think 4 wide receivers in this class that you can build your passing game around. He's one of them. And again, we can keep diving down this technical route, but I don't want to continue to do so. Let's just keep it moving here. Foreman, when you're looking at George Pickens, what were some of the things, if anything, that threw you off in reference to what you saw on film?
We're speaking on film alone. I didn't see a ton with Pickens. I thought he did a great job. Couple things, occasional drops. Nothing that I'm overly concerned with. It wasn't happening overly often, but it's happening. It's obviously he's not Larry Fitzgerald. And then the same thing going along with the drops is saw a few double catches as well too. Obviously not something he's catching the ball. So Zach's going to bring double catching up here in a few minutes again. But yeah, not a whole lot of nitpicking here with nitpicking. Not a whole lot of nitpicking here with Pickens. So I was thoroughly impressed with him. The biggest thing when it comes to Pickens is going to be, is he the guy from 2019 and can he stay healthy? And I think we saw a flash of that even in the national championship game on that long pass he had. So I'm not overly concerned with Pickens. It's just, is there going to be an NFL GM or front office that's going to take that chance on him? That I'm assuming that I know at least 2 of us are, and I'm assuming 3 of us would.
Just a quick point of emphasis as well. No one is the wide receiver that Larry Fitzgerald is. One of my favorite players of all time.
Larry Fitzgerald was.
Listen, I think most wide receivers would probably commit some sort of misdemeanor to have the career that Larry Fitzgerald had.
If Larry Fitzgerald catches a pass for 7 yards, he'll be the second highest receiver. Or was it rushing? I was talking about something with Brady and Brett Favre. it was receiving. I think it was receiving. Yeah, it was receiving. Jerry Rice has the most over 40. Brady's second with 6. And Brett Favre is like third with like -4 receiving yards. But those are the only 3 guys who've ever caught a pass over the age of 40. If Larry gets cast of 7 yards, he'll be number 2.
Come on, Larry. I'm sorry. Bringing this back to George Pickens. Zach, what do you have for drawbacks regarding Pickens' game?
The less desirable side of cathedrals is that there is often a crypt underneath, and Pickens is not without his share of buried skeletons. Pickens does struggle sometimes to create horizontal separation versus man, especially on deep routes where he falls back on relying on his height. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, and ability to win vertically. And I don't think Pickens is a quick twitch player. There's very little suddenness to his in-route cuts. He relies more on savvy reading of coverage than sharp changes in direction. Perhaps the most concerning thing, but least predictable, is Pickens' immaturity. He often gets into spats with defenders that span multiple plays, and there was even an instance where Pickens drew a defensive pass interference, but subsequently got ejected for not keeping his cool in the aftermath. I think that there's an incredible range of outcomes possible for George Pickens, probably the widest gap between floor and ceiling of any player in the 2022 class. But you don't tour the basilica in fear of its crypt. You tour to admire the incredible ceiling.
That's very well said. And I think that when we're looking at George Pickens, you have to ask yourself, I think now, and you have to have a pretty good idea of where you even want to eyeball him, because he, along with a couple others in this class, including the likes of Drake London, there are going to be people in your league who are going to have these players anywhere from second-tier wide receiver in this class down to, I don't know, down in the 10, 11, 12 range, or maybe even lower. So when you're and I know we're not here for the strategy talk of this all, but that's going to be one part of this is with all of this process and seeing these guys move and shake as we do, there's going to be a George Pickens guy in your league. There's going to be a Drake London guy in your league. With that being the case, you're going to have to understand that there's going to be a price to pay, and that the ADP, you're going to have to throw ADP out if you really want these guys on your team, because there's going to be someone in your league who likely wants them more than you do, or as much as you do, and is willing to go get them. So especially if we see them get any kind of day one capital. Let's keep the train rolling here. We're taking our talents over to Happy Valley with one Jahan Dotson. 5'11", 184-pound wide receiver out of Penn State. We already know that Foreman's getting first dibs here, but let's talk a little bit in reference to Jahan Dotson's game. Obviously, 4 years at Penn State, not the best quarterback play that was helping him out in any sort of way. No disrespect to Mama Clifford and everybody else who he had to deal with over the time. But his best season, his senior season, 91 catches, 1,182 yards, and 12 touchdowns. He scored 25 touchdowns in his career. Got flat out produced for an offense that was up and down throughout this past season. Finally had to wait his turn behind KJ Hamler, some of the other talent that they had at Penn State. Showed out in his senior season. Foreman, first dibs over to you. The enigma that is Jahan Dotson. Go.
So initially last week, we were talking about Dotson on various parts pre-post show. I was ready to fight Zach about whatever he's about to say. And I went back and I was like, I haven't missed a Penn State snap in 5 years. I was ready to fight Zach tooth and nail about Jahan Dotson. Went back and watched the film, and I'm not ready to fight Zach tooth and nail. Dotson's an interesting player. It's been fun to watch him grow. I remember watching Dotson as a freshman and sophomore. He struggled with drops. He had a drop problem, and then his coming out party last year was the Ohio State game. on national television last year with that one hand. He had back-to-back one-handed catches while Penn State was down 18 in the fourth quarter. We won't get into that too much. But JMic said, Dotson's an interesting player. He's undersized. He's a bit undersized. He's definitely undersized in terms of height and weight. But some of the good things that he does, I think he does a really good job beating zone. He's got good yard after catch ability. He's excellent in space. He uses his quickness to win in the red zone. That's the one thing I like about some of these smaller guys, where they're not just using their size, they're using their quick feet, and they're using their route running ability to be able to get open in an area that's typically been dominated by the Drake Londons, the George Pickens, the Jalen Tolberts of the world. You can win other ways. I think Tyreek Hill's shown us that. He's I like his suddenness as well too. In his route tree, he can make those highlight reel catches that I was just talking about. Again, I saw some of the sideline awareness that we were talking about with Pickens there as well too. He does a decent job high pointing the ball for someone 5'11". I want to like Dotson more than I do because I've said this before and I will always say this. I am very critical of Penn State wide receivers. I'm critical of all Penn State players because I watch them. I get very excited about them. And I think the last Penn State wide receiver I've truly been excited for was Chris Godwin. I thought it was going to be Jahan Dotson, but it's unfortunately not. It's interesting to me because it's kind of the archetype that Penn State's been having over these last couple of years have been these kind of these smaller, faster, quicker guys with the Dotson, the Hamlers, the Deshaun Hamiltons, and we're going to have another one coming up here in the next year or two with Parker Washington as well too. So I'm just interested in how that archetype has worked with James Franklin. It doesn't seem like they've all three of those players have been good to very good college players, but it just seems like their success is not translating to the NFL as much as us Penn Staters would like.
Very sobering moment here. Everybody light a candle. Make sure that we're lifting up our brother Matt Foreman as he has to work through what a difference a week makes here in this scouting world. Zach, over to you. Jahan Dotson, what you got?
I feel bad we broke Matt. We broke him. It's funny, Matt. You said that you wanted to like Jahan Dotson more than you ended up, and that's exactly how I feel because I went into this thinking, okay, here is my slot receiver. Here is the player that I want in my draft. It's going to be the guy who falls. Penn State has been a veritable juggernaut of NFL production, sending running backs, tight ends, and a slew of talented wide receivers to the league over the past decade. Jahan Dotson certainly looks the part for the next great Nittany Lion, hauling in the 91 receptions, nearly 1,200 yards, and 12 scores. Dotson's quickness is apparent immediately. His cuts in route are sharp and purposeful, and this extends all the way to the stem of his route. Dotson is not afraid to make plays over the middle. He'll haul in catches through contact. He also has great awareness of the sideline, often tiptoeing down inbounds on plays on the boundaries. Dotson is especially effective against zones, attacking both the throwing lanes in the middle of the defense, as well as exploiting out routes when coverage is spread thin to his side.
Jahan Dotson's interesting because I think that if he were in Madden, like his spectacular catch rating would be like way up, but like his actual catch rating is just like, all right, cool, man. The inconsistency of his hands is an interesting thing, but I want to stick to a lot of things that I do like about his game because I do think, and there were some things that you all said that I didn't see the same, and I think we'll get to that perhaps, but in terms of what I think that he does well. Again, spectacular catch stuff, and what he was able to do in garbage time last year versus Ohio State was really like he was going off and catching everything, making all the plays. It was cool to see. He runs by off coverage as well as several guys actually that we're going to talk about tonight. But if you're off coverage versus Jahan Dotson, then you're probably going to be in trouble because he does a really good job of making people look silly, specifically when he gets to the similar route. Strong acceleration out of double moves, which has been fun to see too. And he's consistent in finding holes in zone. There were a couple times early on in his career where I felt like he was struggling to be able to do that. As he got older in this 2021 season, we saw him consistently find holes and find ways to be open, whether or not the passes would be on target to get to him. That's another thing. I'm sorry, Matt.
Easy on my boy Cliff. He's not my boy.
It's just painful.
Team Drew Aller. Let's go.
It's just painful to see Dotson make plays and then they not be able to get him the ball. Because it's like he had an awesome year. And think about how much crazier the production could have been if, you know what, let's stop. This is about Dotson. Let's talk through some of the things that we don't particularly love about his game. Zach, we'll start with you.
I think a lot of Dotson's struggles come against man coverage. And although he changes directions really quickly during his routes, he doesn't always press that advantage with corners. He tends to slow out of some of his breaks, allowing defenders a chance to cut back across his face. And if you're talking about poor quarterback play, if you're letting a defender undercut your route by slowing out of a break and your quarterback is routinely underthrowing you, that is a recipe for disaster. Also, although Dotson didn't see a lot of press coverage, he appeared baffled by it when he was pressed, getting pushed far enough off route to be ineffective. The most glaring flaw, though, to Dotson's game comes at the catch point for me. While he has made some of the most spectacular highlight reel plays that you will ever see, Dotson is more often prone to trapping the ball against his body or double catching before finally securing a reception. I joked with Matt that if you've seen one Jahan Dotson reception, you've seen at least two because he's double catching all the time. Waiting at the next level, though, are NFL corners who are taught to punch out the football at the slightest sign of that bobble, and that is going to be a big issue, I think, for Dotson. While there's plenty to like about Jahan Dotson, it seems like he has a lot of polishing to do before he's a consistent threat for fantasy purposes, and the NFL is notoriously not a developmental league. Hopefully he catches on somewhere where he can start off as a wide receiver 3 and hone his skills against man coverage, because I think against zone, he is going to be absolutely deadly as is.
All right, Foreman, let's go ahead and finish this exercise. I know this has not been the most fun for you. So let's close the book on the downside.
No, I can compartmentalize this. I will root for them. I will be cheering my little jailhouse booty off for them. But no, when they're playing on Saturdays, I can appreciate it. But in this lens, we have to look at the names on the back of the jersey, not the names on the front of the jersey. And I'm agreeing with Zach. I didn't see quite as many of the double catches, but again, I remember the drops. I remember the drops earlier in his career. I'd rather have a double catch and a drop, but exactly what Zach just said. These corners are going to eat his lunch. It was especially evident in the 2021 and 2021 Michigan and Ohio State games. They were both just hitting him at the line, and he just didn't know what to do. I think that a lot of teams were concerned about his speed, and they very well should have been. But with more of your Sunday corners, we'll call them, the guys who are going to play on Sunday, he's going to send some challenges there. I think he's has to play the slot, and he's not playing outside at all, especially with his inability to beat press. Another thing I saw, which was weird for a guy who was as quick as Dotson was, he was losing yards a bunch on sweeps, which is really interesting for me because I didn't remember that going into it. But the Auburn game this year, I will say that it was a night game, and I had a couple beers, and I didn't remember that, but I went back and watched it. It was I think it was 3 or 4 plays, and I don't know. I think that might be going to what Zach was saying about when he's coming out of his breaks, when he's getting the ball, he's just kind of hesitating a bit, and the defensive line were able to figure out what he's doing. Plus, the Penn State offensive line is just every year we talk about, this is the year. This is the year. Never been the year.
The inconsistency with his hands is the most troublesome thing for me, because he goes from body catching one catch to double catching the next to making a spectacular catch to catching one clean and then back to a double. And it's like every game, it's just like, take your pick, take your pick. It's like juggling all four of them. And it's crazy because the highlights are awesome and the inconsistencies are maddening. And that's part of why I call him an enigma with that. His ability to play well in contested catch situations. He lost so many contested catch situations. And it was just, again, I'm curious to see if he's truly 5'11", and the next couple of guys that we talk with too. If they're, I don't think any of them are listed, or are as tall as they're listed, which is going to be really interesting how that shakes out in the process. But as far as his play, you all had talked about his routes earlier, and there were, like, especially in his double moves, I would see a lot of sharpness. But specifically for like outbreaking routes, they would round. And again, and I think Zach, you talked through it with that drifting of having a round out route, with especially with the quarterback who's not going to be on time and not putting it in front of you. That's a problem, and it's only going to be exacerbated in the NFL if you're going to be round like that as well, which bothered me because he's a quick player and he shows quick feet. And the other part with his run after catch. Like, I don't understand how you can be someone that they manufacture so many screens for, and you always either get what's blocked or less than what's blocked. And it's just weird, because I think that he is a pretty good athlete and he shows good instincts, but it's just really weird. His skill set for what he shows, the heights of what he shows, but the consistency of what we actually see on a game-to-game, play-to-play basis, it's not there. And I really cannot, in good conscience, go into this season or go into this draft season and say that I'm excited about Jahan Dotson. I'm excited about what he could become, but I'm not excited about what I see him being in the first couple of years and making an impact and having any kind of value spike for my team. So, man, a little bit disappointing, but again, an enigma and someone that probably has a ton of ability to grow from here with Jahan Dotson.
Can I say something real quick? I'll make it real quick. I think one of the interesting you said about his ability about on screenplays is that Dotson's actually a pretty good punt returner. He has a punt return in his career, and he has a couple big ones this past year as well too. So I don't think I think he can read. I just don't know. I don't understand. Like, I'm agreeing with you, but I don't understand because he's a good punt returner. So obviously he can assess where the lanes are. Maybe he just needs an extra second or two to be able to break down what's going on in front of him. It's just, again, it just doesn't. There's all of the pieces of the recipe are there. It's just when you put them together, it doesn't come out quite right. So I'm not sure what the piece is there, but the situation, if the situation's right, we could be undervaluing him, but the ceiling is just not there for me.
Very good. Last up in our triumvirate of favorites here to kick off the show, wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson out of Kentucky. Yes, the transfer from Nebraska, the prodigal son, if you will, comes back home to where he's from in Kentucky and goes off. Obviously 2 seasons at Nebraska, but here in this last season, his junior season at Kentucky with Penn State transfer quarterback Will Levis. Shout out to Will Levis, bringing all sorts of swag to the quarterback position at Kentucky. 104 receptions, 1,334 yards receiving, and 7 touchdowns. Now, we saw him get over 130 some odd carries in his time at Nebraska. Only 7 carries on the season for Big Blue Nation there for 111 yards and no scores there. Explosive player, speed, quickness, big plays. I could keep going, but I have to temper my bias. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job in this process, because usually when we come in here and we talk about Kentucky players, I get excited and I just I go crazy. And I tell y'all up front, and a lot of it is tongue in cheek, when I talk about Benny Snell being the greatest thing since sliced bread and all these different things. But Wan'Dale's a legitimately really good player. Let's let you guys have first crack at this. Zach, go for it. Wan'Dale Robinson.
I like you slowing down on the Benny Snell talk. That was good. But a Wildcat Blue Porsche 918 Spider hybrid can go from 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds. While a slightly less explosive hybrid, Wan'Dale Robinson can pick him up and put him down. Early in his collegiate career at Nebraska, Robinson is truly a man without a position. But since his transfer to Kentucky, he established himself as a true wide receiver. Even though 2021 was Wan'Dale Robinson's first season as strictly a wideout, he quickly established himself as a downfield threat. Robinson hauled in 104 passes at nearly 13 yards a catch, due in no small part to his ability to track the ball on deep throws and adjust to make the play. Robinson also is very good on shorter routes across the middle, making catches in traffic and getting compact to absorb hits. Getting compact is a little tongue-in-cheek. I do not believe he is going to be 5'11". I think he's going to be a little smaller than that. You saw the picture of him with was it Saban, who's not nearly 6 feet tall, and so there are some questions there. But the single most impressive facet to Wan'Dale Robinson's game comes once the ball is in his hands. He transitions to a runner after the catch almost instantaneously, and then he relies on his instincts and previous experience as a running back to add on extra yardage. And Robinson's acceleration after he makes a jump cut is absolutely incredible because he'll teleport and then be gone for another 4 or 5 yards before a defender has even realized he's missed a tackle.
Road runner status. Maybe not the speed, but certainly the quickness. Foreman, it's over to you, sir.
Yeah, Robinson's definitely an electric player. Again, you're welcome, Fool Levis. Thank you, Kurt Schrock, for taking the air out of the ball in 2020. Clown. No wonder he got fired. Gonna go with Zach said. He's electric with the ball in his hands. I was really impressed with his toughness for his diminutiveness, if that's a word. I'm gonna make it a word. Zach, is that a word?
Close enough.
Perfect. He's a willing blocker as well too for his size as well too. He's got good body control as well too. Again, the guy is incredible with the ball in his hands. And I was impressed with his stature as well too, with his ability to track the ball as well. I was impressed with Robinson because I remember watching him at Nebraska, and I remember the one year I played college fantasy football and I had him as a freshman. And he was definitely running the ball a lot. He seems to be learning the ins and outs of the wide receiver position at Kentucky. But I think a lot of the pieces are there. But JMic, I'll let you hype your man up a little more here.
I'll try not to bloviate and just go for days here with my novella. But listen, man, and similar to Jahan Dotson, someone, if you line up in off coverage, like just forget about it. Consistent winner versus off coverage, consistent winner in zone. His ability to free up in man coverage is also good. Sometimes when they get hands on him, that can be problematic, but he is quick enough to be able to make people miss even at the line of scrimmage. I would, I'm not going to be critical yet. Let's just keep going. His ability to cut sharply with ball in hand, without ball in hand, it's devastating. And one thing I wish Kentucky would have done more of is that it's one of those things I think Cooper Kupp runs quite a bit of, where it looks like it's a deep over, but then they just break it back to the sideline. Teams got so honed in on him running that deep over. They're just like, wait, like we're just going to keep this safety over the top and you can try. So he'd win a lot of those still because he's sharp enough and quick enough out of those, but teams kind of got hip to that over the rest of the year. His adjustments to passes, he's one of my favorite to watch in this class when it comes to adjusting to the ball and his ball tracking ability. I really enjoy his ability to make Levis's not so fantastic passes at times be something that he can work with and make a play on. He understands angles. He leverages his quickness in the open field, and he is consistently making first tacklers miss at all levels, short, medium, and deep. I am a huge fan of Wan'Dale Robinson, and I've been joking with some of the folks in the Devy circles of I'm calling him 101. He's my 101, WAN.01, but not really 101, just something for the kicks and giggles. I could keep going, but I'm going to slow down, doing too much here. Foreman, let's go back over to you when we're talking in reference to opportunities for Wan'Dale Robinson.
We were speaking a little bit about him transitioning to a full-time wide receiver. I think there's still some facets of him being a true wide receiver that he can work on. Just the overall ability. I get kind of the same qualms I had with Jalen Reagor as well too. Similarly, in terms of he needs the ball kind of manufactured towards him, and that's not kind of the wide receivers that I typically go for. I'm trying to refine my process a bit there. I'll get touching that at the end of the episode again. But that's something I'm trying to get towards with my wide receiver process. I would just, again, you guys talk about Dotson. The NFL is not a developmental league. And I'm just hoping that he can get a coach that wants to help coach him up. But like, again, I think the difference with Robinson and Dotson is there's a lot less negative habits there. And there's more it's just the cake's not baked. It's still in the oven. It's not over baked. It's just underdone a bit. I think there's a little bit more opportunity there. And I think we have to segmentate the difference there of learning the skills versus undoing the bad habits, if that makes sense.
That's a really great point. Piece of minutia there, because as you said, development at the next level isn't something that the coaches are going to be, right? It's not a place where they I don't know. We think of coaches as being developers, but anyway, I won't dive deeper into that. Zach, Wan'Dale Robinson's opportunities. What do you got?
In spite of his exceptional quickness in route, Robinson is still in the early phases of understanding how to use that part of his game off the line of scrimmage. And to their credit, Coach Mark Stoops and offensive coordinator Liam Cohn used Robinson in motion a lot, giving him kind of a rolling start instead of him needing to drop the clutch to begin his route. And although Robinson is listed at 5'11", 185 pounds, he plays quite a bit smaller than that, getting bothered by physical corners and pushed off route. Robinson, I think, will need a better understanding of how much cushion a defender is giving him and how to attack it to succeed at the next level. And it's funny, Matt, that you mentioned Jalen Reagor. One of the things with Reagor that I did not like is if he was given cushion, he would try to eat that cushion up and go by a defender. And if he wasn't given cushion, he would try to eat that up and go by a defender. And part of being a good receiver is understanding where that cushion is and when to end up with a hitch route and give yourself 6 or 7 yards of separation, and when that defender is close and you can use your speed. Wan'Dale Robinson is a special player when he gets the ball in his hands in space, a combination of speed, quickness, and balance that you rarely see in a wide receiver. The rub will be, will an NFL staff have the patience and creativity to use him to his potential? After watching Rondale Moore, after watching some of these other quicker wide receivers that need the ball in space, it seems a little bit of a dubious bet to make for fantasy players, especially with the knowledge that a new car depreciates by 20% when you drive it off the lot.
Yeah, I think you all highlighted it pretty well. So I'm just gonna. No, I'm just kidding. I'll share opportunities as well. No, I think everything that you said to this point is valid. It's so funny because I think his play strength, or a lack thereof, play strength. Not that he's not tough. I want to be clear. Shows plenty of toughness, being able to go over the middle, taking hits, and even though it's inconsistent in terms of his completions over the middle and dealing with traffic and playing through contact and all those things. Sweet, he shows effort in that. But I feel like the lack of play strength shows up in so many various areas. Like Foreman, you had mentioned his blocking, and you're exactly right. He does give effort. He's almost like that annoying gnat that just like is in front. Like he's constantly there, but like more like stronger guys just kind of like, all right, that's enough, dude. Chill out. Like get out of my face. And he's able to that people are able to shed that. The hands, I feel like overall are good. There were some drops that bothered me. And it wasn't a case of that he can't do it again. I don't know if it's concentration, and it's not that they were necessarily strung along, but just random drop that would pop up out of nowhere. It's like, I know you're getting targeted a bunch, and obviously we just talked about 90 some odd catches on the year. Like I just don't want to see those. And the vertical fight, Zach, you hit on this. When we're looking at someone who is listed at 5'11" and is likely shorter than that, you have to consistently not only have the willingness to attack the ball, which he does have the willingness to do so, but he fails to consistently win. And he also lets the ball into his body. And at 5, whatever, 7, 8, hopefully 9, 10, that's not going to be, stretch. It's not going to be a recipe for success. I really wish people would stop saying that he gives them Jalen Waddle vibes. And remember, I love Wan'Dale Robinson playing for the good old Cats of Kentucky. He's not Jalen Waddle, and I remember being very excited about Jalen Waddle last year about a lot of the things that he did and does. Wan'Dale's a good player. I'm excited about Wan'Dale. He's in a really interesting tier for me, and I fought really hard against my own bias. I'm excited to see where you guys have him coming up as well. Moving on. Player that's getting a lot of buzz lately. A lot of folks pretty excited because they think the sky's the limit. Skyy Moore out of Western Michigan, the hottest thing smoking out of Western Michigan since Corey Davis. What? Broncos getting it done. Skyy Moore, player production again out the wazoo, 94 catches, over 1,200 yards. 10 touchdowns on the season this year. Again, we're looking at a player who in the MAC just was going off all year long. And when I say going off, I want to be very clear about what I mean when I say going off. Number 1 in receiving touchdowns in the MAC. Number 2 in receiving yards in the MAC in 2021. And number 2 in receptions. Just an outstanding player. I feel like if Kyron Williams was a wide receiver, that's who Skyy Moore would be. Just he's a snappy somebody. He's got a lot of feistiness to him, and he's a fun player to watch. Listed at 5'10", 195. I hope. 4 minutes over to you. First dibs on Skyy Moore.
It was funny because I watched Dotson and then I watched Moore, and I'm like, I think this is what people want Dotson to be. And I actually said that to you guys. Like, I think this is what people want Dotson to be. Moore is he's a slot corner. He runs crisp and he attacks his routes. I loved his route running ability. He does well with the ball in his hands. He can win after the catch. He tracks the ball well down the field. He does a nice job high pointing the ball as well too for a guy with smaller stature as well too. Decent in the run blocking game. I'm not going to ding him for that. I think I would say probably above average of that. He does have strong hands. I wasn't seeing inconsistencies that I was seeing with Dotson as much as I was with, or as much I was seeing less inconsistencies more than I was with Dotson. I liked his ability to have a few release moves. He's a mismatch against safeties with his speed and his quickness. That'll be a great point for him in the NFL. That he can beat. Obviously, there's a big difference between NFL safeties and MAC safeties, but we're seeing a lot of the tools there that you want to see for your slot wide receiver, where they're going to be matched up against some of your nickel corners or your safeties, maybe even the occasional linebacker. If we can get more on a linebacker, that's lights out. That's a mismatch that any offensive coordinator should be taking advantage of. He's not afraid to take a hit. He does a great job through the middle of the field and through traffic. He does a really great job changing his speed well as well too. That's one of the things I liked about him as well.
Playing with tempo. You love to see it. Zach, is the sky truly the limit for Skyy?
I feel like I speak for most of the Dynasty community when I say we've been hurt before. The Mid-America Conference standout wide receiver who looks just a bit out of place against the lower level of competition. It feels like Western Michigan, adept in the art of catching Wolverines, is laying another trap for us in the draft using Skyy Moore as bait. Moore is an incredibly sudden route runner, sometimes appearing actually to teleport away from defenders. His quickness becomes blatantly obvious, especially on hitch routes. When he breaks off back toward the quarterback, 3 or 4 steps before a corner can react. Moore uses his sharpened cutting skills to create separation versus single coverage on slants as well, where he's able to tack on extra yards post-catch. And at 5'10", 195 pounds, we're going to go with that for now until somebody tells us differently. Skyy Moore is fearless over the middle. He'll hands catch in traffic, cushioning the blow from defenders and bringing the ball in safely. I will say he does remind me of all of the guys that I played point guard against in Northern Maine, where I went at 6'1", but listed at 5'10", and the other guys would be like 5'7", listed at 5'10", and when we would come out, there would be a half a foot difference, and we would go down in the post. That I'm afraid that is happening with Skyy Moore.
Oh, is Skyy the trap? That's man, that would be really disappointing because you talk about a player who's shows toughness consistently, will run every route on the route tree consistently, understands angles, is able to beat people after he's got the ball in hand. And I feel like one of the really unique things about him is there's a lot of nuance within the actual route when he runs. The separation within the route is good. He's got head fakes. He's got fakes. He's got cuts. I feel like he's doing all sorts of things to be able to get an edge. And I think that he could be a dream in the slot for I think if as someone who would aspire to have an impact like a Hunter Renfrow per se. I think that Skyy Moore could do that impression if that's what he's asked of, and really play that role well. And it's really interesting because again, the question becomes how many Hunter Renfrows are there that are successful across the league? How many people or how many teams are going to allow their slot receiver who is 5 and 100 like are they going to allow them to be able to actually be the ones that generate volume for their offense? That's a question for another day. Let's keep the conversation going though. Skyy Moore, Zach, when we're looking at the things that we don't necessarily like about what he does, you already called him possibly a trap in 2022. Let's keep talking through some of the things that we'd love to see be better about his game.
Against most of his conference opponents, Moore was able to beat press coverage fairly easily with his quickness, but in games against upper-level opponents, Red, Michigan, and Pitt, he struggled to get free from defenders jamming him at the line of scrimmage, and his struggles with press contribute to the feeling that he might be just a little small and not quite as fast as he needs to be to continue his style of play at the next level. Although Moore often separates in short areas with his quickness, corners close the gap on him rapidly after his initial win. And I think part of this is his lack of real top-end elite speed. But some of it is that although Moore's feet move really quickly on his cuts, sometimes he doesn't actually go anywhere, and it leaves an easier recovery for defenses. And going back to basketball, that was one of the things that you would teach point guards is when you make your plant, you need to attack both laterally to go away from the defender, but also vertically attacking toward the defender, because now the defender has to make up ground in two directions, which is a lot harder than just sliding back in front of you. And I think that sometimes Skyy Moore gets caught not attacking, vertically. And so he makes that real quick move with his feet and goes just a little bit to the left or to the right, and the defender can slide back and make up that ground. There's certainly potential for Skyy Moore to find himself in a position of being a high volume slot receiver on a team looking to ease the burden of a young quarterback. But I think more likely he becomes a nice second or third option for an NFL team. And that's going to be really frustrating for fantasy, because you know how much potential is there.
Very well. Foreman, final words here regarding Skyy Moore and drawbacks.
I think Zach hit the nail on the head there. It's just going to be how is G5 going to compete against NFL talent? I really was bummed that he got hurt early in that Michigan game. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that. Obviously, the Pitt game was a shootout, so we got to see a bit of him there. But I think his just size, his ability to beat press man, he has some real nice release moves when he's not getting pressed. Where I was just looking back and while Zach was talking there, because I was like, I feel like he was the guy that he had a just killer move in the red zone. I think it was in a goal to go situation where he fakes a fade and just cuts back inside, and the guy just doesn't. There's 3 yards of separation there after 2 seconds. So I think there's like I said, the same thing with Wandale. There's a lot of good pieces there. The biggest concern with him is going to be his size and his ability to win against NFL level talent rather than MAC talent. But if we can get a Deontay Johnson-ish, if we can get a Deontay Johnson role for him, that would be the ceiling for him. I'm not saying he's Deontay Johnson, but if we can get that type of role for Skyy Moore, I think that would be beautiful for him.
Yeah, his release versus press, and it's funny we talk about the game against Michigan, the game against Pitt, right? The higher level of competition, showcase games, if you will, and he's inconsistently breaking free. He's using multiple moves and he's winning some, but he's also getting bodied up a lot, and they're also in his hip pocket a lot, and he's also it's weird. This is why I was questioning if he was truly 5'10", because we kind of see him get overshadowed from some of those bigger corners, and they're running with him. It's like, why can't I see him anymore? Why is he all of a sudden being eclipsed? I don't understand what's going on. Oh, he's probably not 5'10". But all in all, fun player and has some really fun film to be able to dive into. But ultimately, the trap may be set. Just a matter of who's going to be falling into it come draft season. Next up on the night for us, we've got 2 guys left. First of which will be John Metchie, wide receiver out of Alabama. He had to somewhat bide his time of all of the wonderful players that we love now in the NFL. He finally come from behind their shadows. So we had to watch Ruggs go. We had to watch Waddle go, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, all these guys that we've been excited about for a while. And finally, John Metchie was able to really put his stamp on the offense this season. 96 catches as a junior, 1,142 yards, and 8 touchdowns, again, in a Bryce Young offense. And as I said before, Bryce Young's really good. he's just really good. We keep watching these Alabama guys. I'm excited about Bryce Young. But John Metchie, I believe he gets hurt in the SEC title game, which was a major bummer to be able to see him go down with the ACL. So who knows where the draft capital is at this point, but a player that a lot of folks really like, shows a lot of good things on film. We're actually over to you, Zach, to get started with John Metchie. What do you have for us?
The star Alpha Centauri A emits roughly the same total energy as the sun, but since it's 270,000 times further away, it appears 73 billion times fainter from Earth. Astronomers call this the John Metchie inverse light law, named after the forgotten Alabama wideout who was outshone by Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, and Jamison Williams over the course of his career. Being overshadowed by NFL caliber competition is a peril of playing for the Crimson Tide, but Metchie held his own in 2021. He plays with more pace than suddenness, working open against man coverage by slow playing his speed. Metchie wins in a unique way against zone coverages where he makes contact with defenders until they're comfortable that they know where he is. And then he breaks away from that contact to create separation. Once he's got the ball in his hands, Metchie plays to his 6 foot, nearly 200-pound frame, utilizing both his speed, but also physicality against smaller corners. And Metchie will also get out and lead block for other receivers downfield, often springing his teammates for an extra 10 to 15 yards. You saw that a ton with Devontae Smith. You saw that a ton with Jameson Williams. You saw it a ton with Jalen Waddle. Anytime they had a long touchdown, that last 15 yards to get to the end zone, there was a block from John Metchie.
I tell you what, Saban leveraging these guys just in moments to be tough between him and Jameson Williams. Quite the high-profile, tough, roughneck crew that he's got there in terms of guys that are being asked to just do a lot of the dirty work between blocking, playing gunner on special teams, things of that nature. Foreman, over to you, John Metchie.
I think one of the best things that Metchie does is he does a great job selling those double moves. There was a game in 2020, I think it was against Texas A&M. It was with Waddle, with Smith, and he had like 3 touchdowns, like 180 yards as the third banana there in the Mac Jones offense. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome seeing this. He does a great job winning yards after catch. He's got good sideline awareness there. He improved, I think, from 2020 to 2021 at the top of his stem. Does a great job with Zach said. He does a great job with zones as well, too. And again, I really was impressed with his wide receiver blocking ability as his job to block for his fellow wide receivers downfield.
Nuance. When I know people don't like to talk about nuance these days. It's a matter of you can get with this or you can get with that. But with Metchie, I think that it's really one of his strong suits. And some people might call it intangibles, but I do think that you see it specifically in his IQ. And I don't know if it's a case where the knowledge was just passed down from the players who he continued to play with or what, but to be able to see him be someone, as you mentioned, Zach, specifically playing with pace and understanding nuance within routes, nuance within how to be able to get open. And I think that can be a calling card for him at the next level in a matter of, I'm not going to necessarily blow you away with all this amazing athleticism. However, I'm going to know the spots to get to. I'm going to know the ways that I can get my buckets. It's like that old guy that you play in the pickup games in basketball. For whatever reason, he still gets to his spots. He still finds a way to be able to get off that janky baby hook over and all these different things to be able to get free. So it's fun to be able to see Metchie play, especially when he is healthy. But I do like a lot of his ability. Foreman, over to you in reference to some drawbacks on John Metchie.
I think Metchie's biggest drawback is his inability to win in traffic. I think he's worse than Dotson at the catch point. Just not good at all in traffic. I think he has also some of the most inconsistent hands. In my notes here, I almost have a drop written down for almost every game. And with his pass blocking ability with his other wide receivers, he just seems super disinterested in times about blocking in the run game. Again, that goes back to something that's not going to be super relevant for fantasy purposes. But when we're talking wide receivers, I want to see a guy who's a dog. Like, I want to see someone who wants to get in there, who wants to run block, because that's going to help him get those little things are going to help him get vaulted up teams' draft boards because they want to see a guy who's going to help the whole team win, not just himself win. He does run a little bit of lazy routes at times. I think they're mostly for the good, but there's sometimes he just gets really lazy with them. Like I said, my biggest thing with him is his ability to catch the ball in traffic. I think that's going to hold him back because whether you're playing inside, outside, unless you're separating, if you're not catching the ball in traffic, I don't really know where your role is then. He's just kind of a bit of a tweener there. It kind of has me souring on Metchie. There was a lot of things about his game that I liked, but if you're missing some of those big key components, it kind of gives me a bit. It gives me a bit of a pause, even more than a pause. Wordle. A pause. It's 11 o'clock.
Spoiler alert. No.
Spoiler alert. 11 o'clock at night. It gives me some cause for concern there.
Very good, John Metchie. We'll continue here. Zach, what do you have for us in terms of things that you didn't quite get with regarding the team?
Despite driving more targets his way, 133 this year, than any other Alabama pass catcher, Metchie has his share of struggles. When a defender can get his hands on Metchie during his route, he throttles down rather than trying to cut to regain separation. And since he's not particularly explosive in his routes already, slowing his speed basically removes Metchie from that play. Metchie's lack of suddenness also hurts close to the goal line because he struggles to extricate himself from jamming defenders. So on the goal line, and we talked about this the last week, but the players that are really exciting on the goal line are the guys who have that Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, real quick slant, that 7-yard, 5-yard slant that you can score on. Metchie does not have that. And he also has a bad habit of drifting versus zone coverage. And sometimes he flat out misreads the cushion he's being given in those situations. That drives me nuts because those are places where you should be able to win consistently. While Metchie had a good career at Alabama, he was perpetually overshadowed by the galaxy of supernovas playing in the receiving corps with him. He's a good but not great player who will need to land someplace that he can work intermediate routes and the sideline to drive up his target share.
I'll save some time here on Metchie. We'll move on now to one Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver out of South Alabama, 6'3", 190. How big a boy are you? Listen, records all over the place when it comes to his production this past year. Literally number one in the Sun Belt in many things. Number one in the Sun Belt with receptions for 82. Number one in receiving yards with 1,474. Number one in receiving yards per reception. Number one in yards from scrimmage. Jalen Tolbert was getting it done all over the place. And again, that stat line, if you're curious, in 12 games, 82 catches, almost 1,500 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns, contested catching all over the place. Jalen Tolbert, South Alabama, small school in the Sun Belt. How excited are you, Matt Foreman?
I was a lot more excited about him after watching him. He's a guy, I think he's a guy who's going up draft boards. From what I was reading about him through Twitter, he had a really strong Senior Bowl week down in Mobile. So, but to the film notes, he does a nice job of using his body as a shield against some of these smaller corners he's playing in the Fun Belt. I think he shows NFL speed for a group of 5 player. He understands where the holes are at zone. He does a nice job in using his route combos to fake out some corners there. He's strong enough to fight through arm tackles. He can make yards happen after the catch. He does excellent with his double moves again there. He can make catches in traffic. He's good at high pointing the ball using his size and his overall athletic ability to beat some of these corners. He tracks the ball well downfield. I kind of feel like him and Pickens are almost the same. They're the same body type, and I'm kind of seeing if Pickens is target, Tolbert is dollar store. But I can see a lot of these things. He's gonna be an analytical darling. I think I saw he was like 33%, 44%, and like 55% for his dominator rating throughout his career at South Alabama. If you're on the analytical side, those are just eye-popping numbers. He's gonna have a low breakout age. I know this is a film podcast, but again, we're just a piece of the pie. I think those are things when those kind of numbers, are popping out. Those need to be said on whenever you're talking about any sort of prospect. He checks a lot of boxes, and I was happy with him. I think he's one of those guys where he's a guy that I'd probably be willing to take him a little bit ahead ADP because I kind of like him. He has a lot of tools that you're not going to need to develop with him. It's just gonna matter about his fit and if he can truly translate to the NFL and hopefully he's not a trap, as we've talked about with some of these other guys.
All right, dollar store George Pickens. Zach, tell us. No, I'm just. I love that. In my mind, I was just thinking. I was tracking. I was like, okay, I get with it. Zach, go for it.
I want to shop at Target, man. I'm high class.
Boy, you fancy.
Yeah, that's me. The climb facing small school prospects hoping to reach the pinnacle of professional football can be as long and daunting as the trek across the Appalachian Trail. It's tough to be seen and even more difficult to convince scouts to believe what they've seen. Luckily for Jalen Tolbert, mountain climbing purists believe that the Appalachian Trail begins in Alabama, and the NFL believes that the draft begins in Mobile. The South Alabama standout made some noise on his home turf at the Senior Bowl, carrying the momentum from his 82-catch, nearly 1,500-yard season. Tolbert has the size and the ball tracking ability to play down the field, playing through contact well and outdueling smaller corners. He also has the versatility to slide inside, making plays in traffic across the middle. But perhaps the most impressive component to Jalen Tolbert's game is his ability at and after the catch point. Tolbert's transition to a runner is quick enough that he routinely catches defenders off guard. And once he's got the ball, he's deceptively shifty as a runner, forcing missed tackles and adding yards after the catch.
What he doesn't have in quickness, he definitely does understand when it comes to leveraging his long speed. It's fun to see him, even though his body maybe doesn't, his physical ability doesn't do the things that really break for amazing quickness in short area. It's fun to see him because I feel like he sees it all. And when he's got the ball, he sees everything that's actually happening. It's almost like a Matrix moment in reverse, where everything he's kind of going faster, like in the Matrix, he's going faster, and everything else is kind of slowing down around him. It's weird because Tolbert sees it all, but his body's not going as fast as what he sees. So it's this weird dichotomy. But I do like his game. And again, when you talk about contested catch and being able to take, if for whatever reason one person misses on a hitch route, he's liable to take that thing 70 yards and leave everybody in the dust. It's fun to be able to watch him play. But separation is a thing, and that's not something that we get a ton of with one Jalen Tolbert. Zach, right back to you regarding weaknesses in Tolbert's game.
Although he impressed coaches and scouts over the 3 days at the Senior Bowl, a longer look at Tolbert shows a talented athlete who struggles with consistency. He struggles to put together strings of explosive releases off the line, instead falling into stretches of very lackluster get-offs. In route, it's much the same thing. Tolbert throws up a spectacular range of Jekyll and Hyde routes, from brilliant to downright sloppy. Tolbert is good at working out of trouble, but the rub is it's because he creates much of it by rounding breaks too close to defenders. Tolbert has one move off press. It's a hesitation, which is, you guessed it, inconsistent. As a second option, Jalen Tolbert could give an NFL team some much-needed versatility and a dynamic threat post-catch. His showing at the Senior Bowl should help buoy his draft capital, so there's definitely some potential upside, especially as a second-round or later rookie pick in Dynasty.
All right, last words in reference to the game of one Jalen Tolbert. Foreman, it's on you.
Just inconsistent hands. The first game I watched against Tennessee, he had a drop in the next play. He just one hands it. Like again with the Dotson, I'm like, it's just what is going on here? I don't get it. And I wrote down what the F star is he doing in the run game. This dude is just disinterested at all run blocking whatsoever. It's just it's all Greek to him. I stopped writing about it because I just got frustrated about it. He's just not interested in run blocking whatsoever. And I got to knock the guy for that because it was just apparent that it was just not a part of his game at all.
Time has come, gentlemen. We are at the point of the evening everyone listens for. Here we are, ranking time. Again, we are talking in reference to our film grades. I want to reiterate, if you're just joining us for the first time for the Hootenanny, welcome. We appreciate you taking the time to be able to spend some time with us and learn a little bit about what we have to say regarding these rookies. But I want to be very clear. These aren't our final rankings in terms of where we're going to be taking these guys come draft season. These are what we see in terms of our film grades for these players. So with that said, we've got 12 guys now that we've looked at over the last 2 weeks at the wide receiver position. And we've got to be able to start either building some tiers or seeing some flatlands appear. Whatever the case is, we've got to determine where we have these guys graded. So 12 players. If you want to talk in context of all 12, go for it. If you want to talk just in context of these 6 players that we have, but we need to know Hootenanny ain't a Hootenanny till it's ran all through with rankings. So Zach, you're unmuted, so you've got first to go.
I'll rock and roll. So as you know, Treylon Burks is my number 1 wide receiver. I've got a second tier of George Pickens, who we talked tonight, and Garrett Wilson. And then of the players that we talked about tonight, it's Wan'Dale Robinson, John Metchie, Skyy Moore, Jalen Tolbert, and Jahan Dotson, bringing up the rear. In terms of where I've got these players, I think that there is a pretty good tier break after Moore. So from like Robinson, Metchie, Moore, I think they're all pretty similar. There's a tier break to me for Tolbert, and then another tier break for Dotson, just because I still think as much as he put up at Penn State, he still feels so raw to me in terms of what he'll need to do at the NFL level. So that's where I am tonight. Pickens, Robinson, Metchie, Moore, Tolbert, Dotson, and stay tuned because I will drop my top 12 on Twitter here in probably the next couple of weeks.
Very well, very well. Foreman.
I also have Pickens in my second grouping as well too. Overall, I just think I think the ceiling is far too high. I think he's a guy that I'm willing to make a mistake on because he has a lot of the tools that I want to see, and I'd rather be wrong on him and miss on some of these other guys where I don't think the ceiling is as high. So he's in this class that I think a lot of people are there's a lot of good receivers, but I think that Pickens has the ability to be one of the great receivers of this class. And in the class that's not really great in some of the other in the running back areas in the other money position. I'm going to probably take a stab on a guy who I think could pay off. I have Tolbert as my next highest guy of these 6. I think there's a lot of things that I like there. After I have Robinson right after him. I will tell you guys this. I have moved Drake London down my rankings significantly. I did some soul searching and some film watching, and I have moved him down. It's just I know we're going back to a guy we already talked about. I think over the guys that I keep seeing who I've been wrong about, he has a lot of the same features. And regardless of Todd McShay having him as his 10th overall player in his latest big board, which is mind-boggling to me, regardless of where I had him at before. And then I actually have it. And then I have it Robinson, Moore, Dotson, Metchie. I'm just off Metchie because of he does a lot of things well, but his inability to catch the ball between the hash marks is just a big problem for me. He kind of reminds me of a bit of DeMarcus Lodge in that same kind of vein where he was overshadowed by some superstars around him with AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, that I could see kind of the same thing where he's easily forgotten, but he does a lot of things well outside of the hash marks. So again, I have a Penn State guy. I love Penn State through and through. I have him as my 11th out of 12 receiver. So not a homer.
Very well. And to close things up here, I've got of the group this evening, I know everyone's waiting on me to call Wan'Dale's name. So just everybody relax, take a deep breath. I told you I'm going to put my bias to the side a little bit. I've got George Pickens as the top player in this grouping. He's actually in my tier 2 wide receivers. I've got Treylon on the mountain by himself. Garrett Wilson, JMO, and Pickens, they make up tier 2. I would be really stoked to get any of those guys at this point in a draft. I've got Wan'Dale as my next up, and I've got Wan'Dale in a weird tier after. He's actually in a tier with David Bell. So that's like a kind of tier 3 kind of. I really want to like you, and I really want to take you. I'd love to have you on my team tier. And then from there, next up for me in terms of how it shakes out, it's Metchie, Moore, Tolbert, Dotson. And I've got Metchie down in the tier that I have. Actually, he's below Chris Olave. I've got kind of a weird tier with Drake London, Skyy Moore. They scored pretty similarly for me, not in the same places, obviously, but just total score. And then Tolbert and Dotson. Unfortunately, I've got Dotson way down. And again, he scored high for me when it comes to zone awareness and adjustments in terms of tracking the ball, things of that nature. But some of the other things that we've already highlighted for the evening, it was just really hard to pinpoint a place. And we've talked about the inconsistency of it all. But that's where I have it right now. It's a really interesting group. But oddly, I'm excited about what could be for these guys a lot more than what could be for the running backs too. So it'll be a really fun season that we've talked through. So now, after 4 straight weeks of Hootenanny, we've got the consistency rolling here. Listen, our consistency rating here at the DFPN right now, we are crushing it. 4 straight weeks. Obviously, 6 players that we've talked about each week. We've got 12 running backs in the books. We've got 12 wide receivers in the books. Zach, do you want to set the stage for what the rest of our time looks like moving forward from this week out?
Yes, so I think next week we'll try to attack maybe 4 quarterbacks and about that many tight ends. The number is fluid. We'll talk about that. We'll see how many players we think are worth talking about, but we ought to at least talk a couple of quarterbacks, Matt Corral and Malik Willis and maybe a couple others, some tight ends. And after that, this is the class participation portion of the program, where if we have missed somebody that you love, if we have overlooked somebody that you're interested in, if you just want to hear us talk about a player that we haven't, send it to us. Let us know. Running back, wide receiver. I have already submitted Justin Ross on behalf of Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Team Big Clemson wide receiver. I know he wants to hear us talk about Justin Ross. And so I've got a list of probably 7 or 8 wide receivers, 4 or 5 running backs. We won't probably talk about all of them, but we'll see what we can get to. So the next couple of weeks are quarterbacks, tight ends, and then our catch-all show. And so that's how we will end the Hootenanny. Swing your partner round and round, do-si-do, and the catch-all show. So this has been a blast. This has been so much fun. I love getting together with you guys, chopping it up, talking about prospects, and just getting back into doing what we love.
Zach, what about the coup de grace, the mock draft at the end? Hopefully.
Oh yes, we definitely will have to do that. We'll have to bring in some friends and mock draft, and that should bring us pretty close to the NFL draft, the day 2 draft show with the dummies. And so everybody does the day 1 show. Everybody wants the glory. We like the substance. We want rounds 2, rounds 3, where the players that really matter to you are going to go. And so hang with us on day 2 of the NFL draft as well. So we got a lot of rookie content coming at you in the next couple of months.
You love to see it. I know that much. I'll tell you what, I love doing this. This is a treat, absolute treat. Final words on the evening. I'll kick it to Foreman right after I say my piece. I think that, again, bets are going to have to be made early for some of these players, because in a land of a class like this, where people and the perception around the class is that there are only so many mega stars, you're going to have to choose wisely about how you navigate this time of year, how you navigate the consumption of information, and how you decide how to parse out what you're going to take as valuable information. So hopefully our perspective has been something that you've enjoyed as we continue to bring you all weekly fun that we have in terms of our scouting. I'm on Twitter at JMic. Foreman's on Twitter at Fat Mormon. Zach's on Twitter at TacitAssassin13. Foreman, I'm kicking it over to you for your final words on the evening.
Go Rams.
Ooh,
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I thought we were past it. Who dey? Lifelong. Zach, over to you.
We really appreciate you rolling with us this long. I know these shows get long, but if you're into Dynasty, you're into the rookie season, you're feeling good about getting this information, and we'll catch you after the Super Bowl. We appreciate you listening. Subscribe, follow the DFPN network, the Dynasty Dummies, all the guys involved in the network. I always say this, but it's true. It's a family. It's a great group of people, and they're all willing to help you. Well, maybe not Kyle. Kyle may not be willing to help you out, but most people are willing to help you out. If you have fantasy football, if you have dynasty questions, trade questions, hit up Russ. Trader Joe is sneaky smart with trading and navigating the dynasty waters. So, follow the guys, but we appreciate you rolling with us on this Hootenanny. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thanks for listening.